Yeah. Welcome to the Hearse podcast. Our guest today is Frazer, songwriter and soul singer, multi-instrumentalist, and co-lead singer for Duran Jones and The Indications. I'm sure many other things as well.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for those two beautiful excerpts. Those are awesome.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you. So, ironically, God used my phone to connect us. All I listen to these days is soul music, primarily Sly and the Family Stone, Alan Toussaint, Lowell George, Aaron Neville, and Peebles, etc. And the Spotify algorithm threw your song, My God Has a Telephone, into the mix. I immediately got chills and investigated who this old school artist was, only to find he was a modern magician, you. How did you foster such a timeless sound, style, essence in an age of frantic noise and pop culture madness?
Thank you. I think for me, a lot of that sound was just using the limited tools I had at my disposal, and using them to maximum effect, I think, while also embracing, maybe celebrating the imperfections that come with that process. Um, a lot of those Alan Toussaint records are meticulously constructed, but there are moments of imperfection that, to me, it's kind of the sauce of it. Um, so many of the records that I loved when I was discovering soul music are full of quirks. The bass is out of tune, the guitar is blown out, the vocals are too loud. It sounds like they only had one microphone. I remember, I can't remember the name of the song, but I remember looking into it and discovering that they were playing on cardboard, the drummer. There was no drum set at all. It was just cardboard, but it sounded amazing to me. Yeah, I don't know. I think the sound of soul music sometimes is the sound of, it's the sound of making do in a way, in service of the expression.
Damn. That's it. We're done. That's the whole podcast. For real, though, thank you. That's so perfectly said and helps me in my process of life, because not only, I think what I love about soul music and Motown always, is what you just said. I never thought of it quite like that, but then that applies to how I want to be a dad and how I want to be, cooking my dinners and doing this podcast. So really, man, profound, beautiful. Thank you. If you were in a bar with a jukebox and only a quarter to your name, what song would you spend it on? Maybe just for tonight. It might change every day, but tonight, if that was the case, what song are you popping on there?
The first one that comes to mind for some reason today is a song called Giving Love by a group called the Voices of East Harlem. Voices of East Harlem were essentially like a gospel choir. They did secular stuff as well. They're kind of underrated, I think. They would open for a lot of really famous soul artists when they would come to New York. So you can see their name on old bills, but their albums are not very popular. But they have 145 that I found just because I like the look of it, and because it said it was produced by Curtis Mayfield, and I'm a huge Curtis Mayfield fan, and I was very curious to know what it would sound like when he applied his talent, his gifts to a group like the Voices of East Harlem. Just the name sounds amazing. I mean, that's one of the reasons my gospel project was originally named the Flying Stars of Brooklyn. It's a gospel naming convention. But that song has just not only beautiful arrangement of cascading vocals with also like the drums are actually kind of tough, which is like my favorite juxtaposition is like beauty and toughness together in music, but the sentiment of the song is incredibly beautiful and just about you know, helping your neighbor and when you show up for people, that's giving love. And
Mm.
yeah, it actually makes sense to me that that sentiment came from New York because in my years there, it's you know, people won't talk to each other on the train, but they will give love always.
You know that old joke that says in New York, "Go fuck yourself" means hello, and in L.A., hello means go fuck yourself.
Wow. That's real. I mean, that's real. I
You
feel
know,
that. Yeah.
that's a beautiful answer again, and I look forward to listening to that after this episode. Thank you.
Yeah.
This episode and chapter is about the fool in all its forms, the fools around us and the fools inside. What is your relationship to your inner fool?
The inner fool, I believe, may be in the driver's seat. Um, I love silliness, and actually, when you were reading your first excerpt, talking about the passage from Alan about uh,
Angels fly because they take
yeah,
themselves lightly.
yeah, and about actually laughing in church made me
Yeah.
smile
Mm.
because some of my very best laughs that I still think about and laugh come from moments when I should not have been laughing. Like come from moments when I wasn't supposed to be laughing. It's I grew up in a synagogue, so it's like in a synagogue at like a family holiday dinner with my dad giving me the death stare down the table. In school, your teacher's mad at you and you're just trying not to look at your friend because you know if you make eye contact, you're done. It's like those are the moments that are just like sometimes those are the deepest laughs. But yeah, I mean I love like humor on the internet is it's a love language for me. I'll see something funny and send it to not just everybody or anybody, but specific people that I know it would resonate with them. And um, yeah, I don't know. Vine actually comes to mind when I think about the inner fool
Mm.
because it's like there's not enough time to develop a storyline, a setup. It's
Mm.
just like 7 seconds of just a burst of comedic energy. So you access just whatever the core is, like the inner fool, whatever it is. It's just
Mm.
the core of what's silly.
I love that. Yeah, I think the fool being in the driver's seat is a win and means you're on a good path because the fool apparently begins the tarot deck and ends it.
Mm.
And so there's something about like beginner's mind, and is that Taoism or the whatever, beginner's mind, the Tao, the way, the child's mind. A lot of masters throughout time have talked about that seemingly simple mindset is the most difficult uh, and the most in tune with the big flow.
That's
So I like that a lot.
yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, definitely the fool in the tarot deck is also upside down.
Yep.
The
The Hanged Man,
orientation,
or no, that's different, or something. I don't know.
right? I think maybe it's the hangman, but
Or both.
um yeah. Um tarot oh yeah, in music, for me, I've always felt like if I was a painter, I'd be painting with primary colors.
Hmm.
Um to me, I think I write very simple songs. I never trained extensively with music theory. Um so if there's something that's more complicated in terms of harmonic movements, a lot of times it will be discovered by accident. Like I'm not a piano player, so I will literally sometimes just play nonsense on a piano and then take away the sour notes until I've found a chord that makes sense and it winds up being beyond what I could normally access on guitar in my head. But yeah, I think simplicity in music, like um, when things come from an intuitive level, they connect at an intuitive level. Even if like you said, like actually exactly like you said, Alleluia is divine nonsense. It doesn't matter what the lyrics are. If they feel good to say, then they're gonna feel good to sing. They're gonna feel good to listen to. There's a lot of power in that.
Two things come to mind. One is the tones, and they say like the music of the spheres and tones created the whole universe. I don't know if you've heard that. There's actually theories I've heard that hundreds or thousands of people would sing in certain, or chant in certain formations that could actually lift pyramid stones, and that's how they would manipulate stones that to this day people are like, how did they lift that? Apparently tones are that powerful that actually can vibrate and sing things into existence. So that's one. And the other thing that comes to mind is Winnie the Pooh, who my 4-year-old son constantly watches. We limit TV time as much as possible, but to this day, Winnie the Pooh, which I grew up on, continues to be one of the sweeter and more profound things, I think, in existence. A. Milne, if you're familiar, who wrote Winnie the Pooh, if you go back and read the original text, it's kind of like a Zen monk's like philosophy on the world.
Hmm.
And then a guy named Benjamin Toff wrote a book called The Tao of Pooh, which is taking Taoism and showing how Winnie is the ultimate example of a Taoist.
Wow.
And the idea is like, what's for lunch, basically. Like having that mindset allows you to have the miracles keep coming. You know what I mean? When you overcomplicate everything, you're alienating yourself in your your thoughts from the hummingbird or the smile of a stranger or whatever it may be. And I'm definitely guilty of that. So it's not even to shame that either. I think there's initiations and travels that we must go on. I think it's T.S. Eliot who says something like, to end where you begin and to know it for the first time. So I think it's like, that's why we're born. We come from oneness, perhaps, that beauty, that joy. We fall into bewilderment, Tower of Babel, confusion, suffer, separation, illusion of fractaled, blah, 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 hopefully to return into an awareness that we truly are all one, and we're not.
Mm.
And it's go fuck yourself means hello. So it's all good. That kind of thing.
It's super interesting. Yeah, a while back last year I read a speech from an indigenous activist who's since passed away, but his name is Russell Means, and he was speaking about the Eurocentric culture's tendency towards demystification, towards wanting to figure out why and how and what's the science behind it. And on a personal level, I do think that all that stuff is super interesting, but I do understand the power of not really trying to dig so deep into creating some codified system of scientific laws and whatever, but just being like, stars are fucking cool.
Yeah,
There's a lot of
exactly.
power in that.
Yeah.
A lot of joy in that.
And paradox rules, right? My dad always reminds me of that. So it's what you said. It's like, that is cool. And it's not to knock and say yes or no. This whole show, it's why it's called Pink Hearse, right? It's like a death mobile, but it's pink and silly. And we're going to build a hearse. Currently, we're planning it. That's a recording studio that rolls around in this pink death mobile and picks people up and flows and celebrates rebirth. But the juxtaposition of death and cartoon pink, for example, it's like, apparently paradox rules means if it's true in this world, it's probably not true in the other world, meaning the invisible world. And if it's true in the other world, it's probably not true in this world. So it's like part of, is it maturation? I feel like that should be the word. Is that what it means to mature? Maturation? I don't know. Maturation? Yes. Okay. Haha. Is about developing a psyche that can hold seemingly opposing opposites, which is alchemy. Because if you can hold seemingly opposing opposites in alchemy, they say that's what gives birth out of that tension to the mysterious third that no one has ever seen.
Hmm.
And my big homie, who's not really my big, I mean, he is, Michael Mead. He has a podcast called Living Myth. I've interviewed him. He's a true elder. He's unreal in this time, especially. Talks about how opposites and polarities are often pointing toward, I forgot the exact way he said it, but basically it's like if there's racism Me Too movements, what's happening in the world. Not to go into that because that's not really what the show is about in specifics, but those symptoms will continue to rise because they're trying to point toward a unity. They're
Mm,
opposite. And until we like hold it and are able to let that be born, they will keep emerging more and more dramatically because we're not listening.
mm.
But anyway.
No, I mean it's no, it's super interesting. I, I I do think it is incredibly important right now to be able to hold multiple thoughts at once, multiple identities at once, multiple positions at once, that we occupy as are we, how are we victims? How are we contributing to, like how are we complicit? Like, yeah.
And just so everyone knows, we're recording this either in BC or in 3042. So no one knows exactly what we're actually referencing here whenever this comes out. Um, so moving down into this patch, I really appreciate the flow of this conversation. I want to thank the spirits that brought us here. I'm having fun. So thank you again. How do you dance with your inner critic? How does your creativity flourish in such a way through all of the inevitable doubts, fears, and tribulations?
Wow, interesting question. Usually questions that I get in interviews are like, so you play music? So I really appreciate the questions. I am not much of a dancer. Um, I've always, I think, been it, since maybe around 15, 16 for some reason, and I think maybe there's actually a part of it that's like self-consciousness. But I've always felt more comfortable helping other people dance. But like making the music to help people dance. But yeah, on a metaphorical level, my inner critic is definitely pretty vocal sometimes.
Hmm.
I think that is part of balancing, trying to love flaws and also having a tendency for myself towards perfectionism because when you know a lot about music, when you know what the best records are of all time, at least in your own life, it creates a bar. It creates something to fall short of. It creates a delta between what's in your brain as the idea you're going for and the reality of the outcome. Um, I think it ebbs and flows for me. There are times, especially because the album creation process, the music creation process is very slow
Hmm.
and you can't seek external validation. I mean, some people do. Some people will, like post on Instagram and be like, check out this song I'm working on. I don't do that. Things come out when they like come out. I'm like very private about like what I'm doing, whatever. So I spend a lot of time here in my own brain and it goes in waves of like um um what's the word, node, anti-node of like,
Hmm.
it's like this is cool. No, this is shit. No, actually this is sick. No, this is garbage. No, this is amazing. And then it's like, right before it comes out, I reach this point of like, you know what? I have no idea what
It
it
is what
is.
it is.
It is what it is. It is what it is.
I love that.
Um, yeah, I mean, I try to at the end of the day prize my inner critic though over what any arts criticism has to say.
Hmm.
Uh, and I always try to also take seriously more than any arts criticism or even my own inner critic, actually, in a way. Um, when I hear from people directly that my music has reached them, that
Hmm.
the message in a bottle that I chucked into the ocean has washed ashore somewhere,
Hmm.
um, that to me is how I actually deal with my inner critic, is to be like, fuck what you think, because your music is mattering to somebody out there.
Hmm.
It has helped, I know it has helped people get through hard times, depression, moments where they contemplated whether
Mm-hmm.
their own existence was worth it or not. And but not just in the moments of, existential panic, but also it's helped people propose. It's helped people have a first dance at a wedding. It's helped them dance. You know,
You
it's
got my 4-year-old son singing it on the way to school.
I love seeing. For some reason, little kids love falsetto, and I get tagged in videos all the time of like babies, infants, little babies, toddlers, young kids enjoying the music, and it's so sweet to me. Like that actually is maybe how I dance with my inner critic. Is I bring my friends along.
You watch toddler videos of people singing your song, and you're like, man,
Exactly.
shut up, critic. Look at this.
Exactly.
That's awesome, man. Thank you for your really thoughtful. I know these questions are a bit ambiguous and not meant to be challenging in a pretentious way at all. But I appreciate your care and holding the grayness of all of that. And on that note, I didn't even realize, being a pretentious poet myself, philosopher and musician, there are many things I deem to be tacky, foolish, empty, pathetic, and soulless. It is said that life is a mirror, and things that trigger us negatively or positively outside are simply reflecting what's inside of us. What do you find to be especially whack in today's world? And how might that actually be a part of you that you haven't accepted yet? I told my wife that question. She's like, have you answered that? And I was like, wait a minute. Aaron goes first. I'm following him.
All right.
He's a
I'm
better
gonna
man
go,
than
and
me.
then you're gonna go.
Oh, fuck. Okay. Fair.
I think I used to be more extreme in my denunciations. I think I used to be very quick to be like, that's bullshit. That's whack. This is the real stuff. I think that, I think it maybe kind of goes back to the conversation about the inner critic and sort of your music reaching people. It's sort of like, I think about the idea of like the only rule is it has to work. The only rule is it has to work. And it's like, I mean, even if it doesn't work, whatever, like who cares? But it's like, but it's like if your art reaches somebody, and by reaches somebody, it could just mean that they're pre-gaming to go to the club and they're just like, yeah, like it just makes them like feel good while they're just like throwing back fireball shots or whatever nasty shit they're drinking. It's like I still think that there's validity there. And I think that so much of art is context. Not always. Sometimes I don't need to know who is singing in order to be like, this is cool and this moves me. But it's like, trap for me. Like I'm a huge hip hop fan.
Yeah,
That's
I grew
my
up
life.
being that. Yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, you're from New York. It's like
Exactly.
you're from the home
I'm
of
a
it.
rapper, actually. Yeah.
It's in your DNA. It's like,
yeah,
it's in the DNA of the city. And I grew up in Baltimore, East Coast, 90s rap, piano, dusty drums. It's Keep It Real by Milkbone. It's Enter the Stage by Black Moon. It's like it's The World Is Yours by Nas. It's like it's the real shit, right? And it's like to hear the stuff that's just like the mumbliest, all triplet boom, and it's like my immediate reaction was like, this is bullshit. But then it's like, a friend helped me understand. First of all, I think there is an element of punk to trap.
Interesting.
An element of like the bar for technical skill is, I think on some level, in some metrics, is lower for that style compared to other styles of rap. It's less lyrically dexterous. It's like, the beats are simple. It's more about like a raw expression, I think. And it's also like, not only am I gonna do it in a super simplistic way, I'm gonna do it loud and in your face. And I think that is an element of punk. There's an element of personal expression there. And also the context is like, I don't think you want to listen to it when you're like, you crack a bottle of wine, you're contemplating life. It's like you probably want to listen to it like a strip club with somebody's like ass in your face. And like, in that context, you probably don't want to hear Black Star going hiding like thieves in the night from life, illusions of Oasis. No, you want to hear just like boom, just chest rattling 808s. You know,
Yeah.
that's probably what you want. So it's like, how is it? You know, I think how it was a reflection of self is a certain level of snobbery on my part at the time. Um, Trying to, just measuring all art by one measuring stick, you wind up, you know, it, putting a circle over the outline of a triangle and being like, this is the shittiest triangle I've ever seen. It's not a triangle, it's a
Mm,
circle.
mm,
And yeah, I think that's, in a way, I'm still on that journey of, when my taste brushes up against a style that I don't like. um, I think the most helpful tool, and I learned this from my ex,
mm.
who is great at this, is curiosity. Uh, to approach something with curiosity.
Wow. I'll try to be concise. One thing comes to mind. There's somebody who said, let something like, let nothing human be foreign to me. So that's kind of the vibe, right? So like the worst, outside of music, even things that are unfathomable in the world throughout time that happen now, where we say, I could never. Even the distinction of darkness and light is tricky to me because it implies an other, and that's a
Mm,
fractaling of psyche, perhaps. But I think for me, I love everything you said. I appreciate it. I think there was the martyr for me growing up. Like at 13, that was September 11th for me. I grew up going to a lot of different Waldorf schools, if you're familiar, a lot of mythology and fairy tales. And then I moved to New York when I was 7, and it was a juxtaposition of that, get money, fuck bitches, versus we are magical beings floating in outer space here on some journey. And my whole life, 13, 12, 13, September 11th, I wanted to die, really. And that was like kind of a peak part of that because I didn't understand the suffering and the callousness of the world and how to reconcile that. So the same way somebody might feel like my mom helped set the organic standard in America. That was one of her things, was like, how can we be doing, how we all have our thing, maybe that
mm,
triggers us. Like someone gets really mad when people use plastic in this. And when I understand, but mine was always insidious, sneaky, poison, sugar, Hollywood trickery
mm,
that I felt was almost abusive and seductive. And I was managed by Pharrell's manager. I've been in bands. I was flown out by Dr. Luke. I've had many iterations in music shit. Illmind, if you know, we had a group, Illmind
mm,
producer in New York for 8 years. I've been in this game. And it's not to judge that either, but the closer I got, hanging with Nipsey, hanging in a studio with Dre, being in all these positions, Nipsey was amazing in my brief encounters with him, just as a spirit. I don't mean to name drop or talk shit. What I'm trying to say is I became sad and saddened by what I saw going on around the art, as I'm sure you've seen in certain ways. I would imagine your music, though, has its own cool bubble, maybe more so than, hip hop. In that big light is pretty intense with what's around it. But that's really where my martyr, and I was like, man, this is not only deadly to my little brothers, to my son potentially, to humanity, but it's also corny. It's actually like in the light of day, if you brought that kind of energy around a grown ass man or woman, it's pathetic. It's actually, I remember being in Africa when I was 15 with the tribe of hunter gatherers, and I had a Master P magazine of The Source. He was on the
mm,
cover. And my man Hamisi was looking down in a loincloth, and he's saying Mzungu, Mzungu, pointing at Master P, and it means stupid white man. So this was a black African man pointing at a black man on a rap album cover saying stupid white man. So all of these kind of things. I guess I'm not being as concise or short as possible, but I can feel the rage and the tension in myself because it really upsets me. But then what I'm coming to these days is more of the, Joseph Campbell, the world's a mess. It's always been a mess. It's not your job to fix it. It's your job to work on yourself. So I think the reflection of my fool or why that makes me so mad is I don't like sneakiness. I don't like
Mm.
spiritual people who claim to be so fucking spiritual,
Yeah.
but they're really like the shadiest motherfuckers in the world. And I
Yeah.
don't like, yeah. So I prefer like a really intense, bad mamma jamma, whatever you want to say, someone who's a criminal, who's real with that, because I feel real. I like authenticity. So I think maybe, and my wife would, because she's a depth psychologist, probably reveal 39 other layers beneath this conclusion that I'll leave us with in this moment, is I too have sneaky sides. I too have agendas that I'm aware of. I too manipulate. And maybe there's some mirror in that where I feel, yeah, like I haven't accepted that part of myself perhaps enough yet, or I'm working on that. I don't know. It's exhausting.
It's fascinating. I mean, yeah, it's I mean, it's fascinating. Yeah, it's really interesting.
To be continued. They can, whoever's listening can, tell us the truth. What's the
Yeah.
truth?
Oh,
All
the
right,
last thing I'll say, the
yeah,
last thing
you go.
I want to say about this is just guilty pleasures. I think also it comes like it makes me think of guilty pleasures. Like when people ask about like I don't know, shit like shame around like we have to hide this thing that especially with art, it's like I think maybe part of the reason like we all have we all have agendas on some level, but I think it's like do we have the judgment makes us sort of like put whatever it is kind of you have to like conceal it, but I think it's extra unhelpful when it comes to like enjoying things.
That's a good point and also makes me think of the difference between judgment and discretion.
Hmm.
And that discernment is good, like I think. So it's okay to be like, that's whack. But it doesn't have to be, for me, that's why I don't have to condemn it and now
Right,
make a
right, right,
religion that says anyone who does that is evil. I
right.
can just say, yeah, that's not for me. And it's
Yeah,
maybe really not for me. And like, I don't want that in my house that much, maybe, because you can be
yeah,
aware,
yeah.
but, but there's something about that too. There's something about Sly, for example. All I've been listening to really is Sly.
Hmm.
And then your 2-song EP, that one that I read,
Hmm.
My God has a telephone, and live on.
Hmm.
I literally have those on repeat. But Sly embodies a fermentation of everything in one thing that feels like sexual and crazy and prolific and angry and gentle and peaceful. And it's almost like this syrup that's stewed long enough, whereas a lot of the things that I used to listen to now feel young to me for some reason
Hmm.
as a 36-year-old man. And I'm not judging it, but it's almost like, yeah, it feels too like sugar in your face as opposed to like
Hmm.
a subtler palate. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I mean,
Hmm.
Sly's crazy, man. Sly says stuff like, what's that line that I just adore? And his new book just came out too. And I want him to be on the show, but he's in his 90s. We'll see. He said, I switched from Coke to Pep, and I'm a connoisseur.
That's a
and I'm
bar.
and I'm pretty sure he's talking about going from cocaine to crack cocaine, but saying that in the soul. I don't know. It is a bar. It's anyway. We'll continue that. Please say anything else on that, but it's definitely a wound in me, and I think we're here to reconcile or do our share of that. Which, the other. What is the other?
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. Let's lighten it up a little bit. We collect jokes on this show, especially dad jokes. Do you have a favorite you can share with us? That's tough. It's putting on the spot. It's always hard to remember the joke in the moment. I have so many, so if you don't worry.
I mean, I feel like the classic one that comes to mind is like a man walks into a doctor's office covered in saran wrap and says, "Doc, I think I'm crazy." And he says, "Yeah, I can clearly see your nuts."
Oh my God, that's great. That's great. I've never heard that, and I love that. That's perfect. My dad, um, my dad is a dad joker, and I've just fallen in love. I've become a punster. Like my 4-year-old son and I made up the joke. What does the tree say? The tree says, "Would you please leave me alone?"
That's good. That's
It's not
good.
bad.
No,
I've
it's
been
funny.
getting into Mitch Hedberg.
Uh-huh.
You know about
Sure.
him?
Yeah,
Oh man, he's
absolutely.
he's crazy.
The king of one-liners.
The king of one-liners, indeed. I appreciate you going there. I almost feel like the existential stuff is easier than like putting you on the spot for a dad joke. So I really appreciate that. Here,
Sure.
I'll tell you a joke which is offensive perhaps, and we can edit it out later, even though I don't like doing that. But my dad told me this joke, so I'm going to blame him. So we'll see. We're going to go there. So the 7 dwarves are with the Pope, and Doc says, "Your Holiness, do you guys have any small nuns?" And the Pope says, "Excuse me, son?" And Doc says, "Little nuns." Pope says, "Do you mean nuns that are small in stature, son?" He says, "Yeah, little nuns." The Pope says, "Well, yeah, I mean, I guess there's some nuns that are shorter than others." And Doc says, How small are we talking?" And the Pope says, and he puts his hand like 4.5 feet, 4 feet. And Doc says, No, way shorter than that. Puts his hands like 2 feet. Pope says, "No, son, I'm not aware of any nuns that short." And Doc says, "I knew it. Dopey fucked a penguin." You're not even supposed to laugh. If you laugh, you'll get in trouble. Don't laugh at that.
Why? What does that mean?
It means that penguins look like nuns, and that one of the 7 dwarves was bragging that he had fucked a nun and gotten caught, and so he said it's a
Oh,
nun.
black
And
and
then
white. Oh, got it, got it, got it.
Doc was talking to the Pope, and they're there, and he's trying
Got
to
it.
make sure his friend was
Got
all
it,
right.
got it.
I apologize to penguins. Sorry. We also collect wisdom on this show. Do you have a favorite mantra, quote, or poetic advice that gives you strength and inspiration?
I mean, one that I already shared, the only rule is it has to work.
Yeah.
Really helps me fight my like purist instincts. Um, yeah, it's like, is it synthesizer strings? Is it MIDI strings and not an actual
Hmm.
string section? If it sounds good, nobody cares.
Hmm.
If somebody's playing on stage using like backing tracks, but the audience is having a great time, nobody cares.
Hmm.
It's like they're breaking rules to a game that nobody's playing and nobody cares about.
It's like jazz theorists versus pop producers,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, yeah, totally. I mean, another one that I think about all the time is like I grew up playing soccer,
Hmm.
and my soccer coach in high school used to say, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take."
Mm-hmm. I love
Um,
that.
yeah, I mean, you literally, it's like, I don't mean this in like a romantic or like, flirtatious way, but like, send a DM to somebody you want to connect with.
That's
You
what I did with
never
you.
exactly
Yeah.
and like you just sent me a message, and it's like, and now we're here. It's like
Yeah.
I'm working on excuse me, I'm working on my new record right now, my new solo
Hmm.
record, and
Hmm.
I'm incredibly proud of it. Um, it is, I think it's the best batch of songs that I've made.
Wow. Wow.
Um, and I'm doing it with a producer named Alex Goose.
Hmm.
He's a hip hop producer. Uh, actually wouldn't be surprised if he was familiar with your work, because
Hmm.
he's also like a hip hop head. And um, we connected because I just sent him a message, not even with the intention of networking, just in the same way as people were reaching out to me saying like, "Thank you for making your music, it means a lot to me." I literally, that was it. I was just like, I found his mixtape on DatPiff in like
Oh
2012.
shit.
Yeah,
Wow.
and
Dat
it's deep.
Piff.
And
Yeah.
I sent him a message like maybe in 2020,
Wow.
and was just like, "Hey, I know this was like years ago, but those beats meant a lot to me, and thank you." And that was
Wow.
it. And then we connected, and it became a really beautiful artistic partnership. So take that shot.
Crazy. Take that shot. For real, man. That's beautiful wisdom, and that goes into the inner critic for me. Not trying to insulate my self-worth from those moments where a lot of the times people don't respond or that, not to let that get into the acidic breakdown of my love of self or, self-doubt. Not letting that happen is what I'm trying to do. Take the shot, let it go. Take the
Yeah, I
shot,
mean,
let
and
it go.
yeah, and I think also when it comes to art, it's kind of like, part of the reason I'm here right now with you is because you found my song, My God Has a Telephone.
Yeah.
That I did that in my living room on a 4-track tape machine. The guitar amp was in the bathroom on top of the closed toilet lid. And I put it out. I just put it out. There's no PR, there's no marketing push. You just put it out there. And even if nobody found it, it was still a space for me I was really happy with it. So it's
Dude,
like,
I hear it playing all in this small town where I live in California.
It gets played it's still my most streamed song on Spotify.
There's a reason. That song is like, I mean, I'm going through your work and I love all of your, I mean, really, I was shocked. The first night I found you, I came home and was giddy literally for the first time in a long time. Like I said, I don't get excited by new music most of the time. And showing my wife and my son for a long time all your work. And those two, though, there's something about that sound that, yeah. And I love hearing where it came from and how it's still rippling, and a lot of wisdom in that.
Thank
A lot of
you.
wisdom. Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
that song was written in 2 hours. I mean, I had the riff in my head. I had the boom, 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 boom,
Oh,
boom. I
dun,
had that riff in
dun,
my head
dun.
actually for probably like 2 years, just bouncing around. And that was actually I was busy with my band. I mean, that was my
Duran,
focus. Yeah, with Duran Jones and the
Indications.
Indications.
Yeah.
But I just sort of was like, I think this thing needs to get out of my head. Like, I think if an
Wow.
idea sticks around for that long, it's because it's like a recipe for a haunting. Like I feel like you have to. I had to get this idea out of my head because it
Yeah, it came to visit
refused.
you.
Yeah, it refused to leave. And
Good.
Prince, I don't know if you heard that, or no, Michael Jackson used to
Mm,
think that ideas would come to you, and if you don't take them, they'll go to somebody else.
100%.
And
There's
there's
another
like a,
poet. Go ahead, my bad.
no,
Yeah.
no, go, no.
There was a poet or a writer, I forget her name. She did a TED talk and she described writing a poem as like looking out her window and seeing this lumbering creature beast from the woods. And if she doesn't go up fast enough, sometimes she'll have to grab it by the tail and write it backwards. But there's this like brief moment. There's another one. I don't know if it was Tom Waits or Tom Jones or Bob Dylan, one of those guys who said ideas would strike when he was driving his car stuck in traffic, and he'd be like, "Leave me the fuck alone! Like, come back when I'm in a position." This is pre cell phones and everything, but like, stop fucking with
Yeah,
me.
yeah. I mean, I think about this is abstract, but I feel like you're the exact abstract dude to like share this with. But I think about songwriting like I'm in a forest with
Hmm.
like ancient trees, like petrified wood, just like thick ancient trees I couldn't even wrap my arms around. And on a lot most of the branches in the forest are barren because there used to be just like amazing fruit of the gods that were just plentiful. But over the years, people have just picked them, picked them, picked them. So I'm wandering through this forest with all these barren branches, and I think sometimes people assume that there's no fruit left in the forest. But if you wander around, like you will sometimes find a fruit on the lowest branch, and you look around like, how did somebody miss this? I'm sure I could have sworn somebody already picked this fruit, but it's there, you know. Not every great song has been written. Sometimes there are simple ideas that are still waiting to be, put into song. Simple, molten, core fucking ideas like When a Man Loves a Woman. Like that song to me is just like the molten core of so much humanity. It's just like yeah. And so anyway, I think if you wander around that forest long enough, you'll find some fruit.
That's incredible. I love that image. And it makes me think of that idea by maybe Oscar Wilde or Eliot, I think Wilde. He said the ancients stole all our great ideas. But I disagree with that. And that's more what you're saying, that
Yeah.
people think that. And maybe
Yeah.
they think that to scare everyone out of the forest or something.
Yeah.
It's like an initiation. It's like, yeah, there's nothing here. It's all been taken. Right. But that's
That's
sick as
deep. I
hell,
like
man.
that. Yeah.
That's very deep on your, yeah, man. Thank you. So as we slowly wind, I always try to be aware of time and things of this nature. No rush, but let's see. On the topic of God and my God has a telephone, some of my favorite songs of yours, like I just said, seem like love songs to God, songs of faith and inspiration. When I lived in Harlem, I met a guy. I was on 129th between 5th and Lenox for about 10 years. And I made friends at, what's the name of that place? The Shrine. Did you ever go to the
Mm.
Shrine with all the vinyl
No,
on the ceiling?
no, it was so uptown for me in
Yeah.
Brooklyn. It's another
No,
country.
of course, got you. But I would go there sometimes, and I go there, and I'm listening to Jimmy Cliff being played by a cover. Is playing Jimmy Cliff. The Harder They Come, one of my favorite all-time artists as well. And that movie, have you seen The Harder They Come, The Harder They Fall? The film he made.
Mm-mm.
You should peep that. It's pretty funny and amazing. So I'm eyes closed. I'm in my zone, and I look over, and there's this guy there, an older man, and we become fast friends based off that moment. It was like a recognition of both of us vibing really hard to Jimmy Cliff, and that was our connection. So his name was Tony, probably in his 50s, lived there a long time, is a Rasta who didn't smoke weed, which I thought was interesting. In my stupid stereotypical head, I'm like, yeah, Rasta smoke weed. He's not. He doesn't smoke weed. Taught me many things, was kind of a cryptic, mystic kind of guy. Um, he taught me how to drink milk and rum. I remember that. We'd drink milk and rum. That was funny. And I would do shows up there sometimes, and him and his friends Reedy, and they had a few guys, they'd come around and they'd be like, you're overripe, man. What's like, why aren't you bigger already? Get success. You're overripe.
Mm.
I'm backing this story up or providing foundation. So one day, Tony, who would say things like, he lived on 129th, the block where I was back in the day when it was arguably the craziest block in all 5 boroughs, stabbings, shootings, blah, blah, blah. He said, I'd walk through every day. Nothing ever happened to me. He said, if God wants you to die, you can walk through a flower patch and you'll get stung by something and die. So that's the kind of cat he was. So he's walking and he passes a Jehovah's Witness on Lenox, and the guy's trying to hand him a pamphlet. And Tony says, sorry, I don't have the time. And as he walks past him, the guy says, you're a sinner. And Tony turns around. He's like, oh, shit, now I got some time. So he goes to the guy. He says, all right, you just call me a sinner? And the guy's, but yeah. And he says, doesn't it say in the book or some of the stuff you're trying to give me, thou shalt not judge? And the guy's like, bah, 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 bah. The guy and Tony says, all right, let me ask you a question. Do you love God? And the guy says, of course I love God. God gave me everything. Tony says, oh, you love God because he gave you something. So if God didn't give you anything, you wouldn't love him? The guy's tongue-tied. Okay, next question. Do you believe in God? Of course I believe in God. How could you ask me that question? That's ridiculous. Tony says, I don't believe in God. Belief is subject to change. One day you believe something, the next day you don't. I know God, is what he said, and he walks away. And that story has always stuck with me. So back to the question about the songs of yours that speak to me, and songs throughout time, even love songs, I've always looked at them not just romantically, but as you and the universe, you and God. So I know this is a potentially tricky question, stacked on other tricky questions, but would you say you believe in God conceptually or know God personally? You can laugh in church here. This is a laughing church.
Do I believe in God conceptually and know God personally? No, I think it's probably closer to knowing God personally because, well, because I think at this stage in my life, no is a hard word because it feels like it implies a certainty that I don't have in terms of what is God.
Good. Before you go on, that's a good point. I don't mean know in like understand. I mean know like you've come in contact with something that's greater than your understanding or something
Mm,
like that. That's more what I mean by know, like you've met God. Not a
yeah.
person named, you know
No,
what I
no, no.
mean? Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I think at this point in my life, um, if I had to describe, somebody asked me what God was, I would I would say it's more like an energy. It's the law of conservation of matter. It's like the f- the notion that energy can't be destroyed or created, just changed. It's like, but also like I think I know it in music, in the way when I hear songs that give me the chills, like I feel it in the small of my back, like radiating out from my spine towards the sides of my rib cage, and I feel, adrenaline in the undersides of my wrists. I mean, I think I know it in the way that, people come together at a show and lay their burdens down in the same way that they do in a church. But I also know it in just like the laughter when you're trying not to make eye contact with your friend because your teacher's yelling at you. Um,
I love that.
yeah,
That's perfect. And again, that question, I know you know God because your music says it does, but not, yeah, just in the fabric of it. But I appreciate you going there. And people say, someone said, asking if there's a God is like a fish swimming in the ocean, asking if there's an ocean, basically. Or trying to talk about it is like a fish saying, what is water?
yeah,
You know, it's like
yeah.
you're
Except,
so in it.
and the fish is also. It's like if the fish was also made of water.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's
Yeah,
true. It's true. Crazy. I appreciate
crazy.
you going there. So, okay, let's see. This episode, like I mentioned, is a part of a season called A Void. It's a play on words. It's A space void, or saying avoiding the void, you know.
Mm,
In it, we explore how everything seems to come from the void, and that usually the things we avoid in ourselves hold great gifts. What did you once avoid that when you faced it turned into a power or blessing?
hmm. Um, Singing.
Really?
Yeah, I was
Wow.
very embarrassed to sing for most of my life. Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy.
Um,
Coming from the illest singer I've met currently. That's pretty
Thank you.
amazing. Yeah, really, truly.
Uh, I didn't. I think on some level, I grew up in a family where causing a scene is like the worst thing you could do. Like, you can argue and have it out, but arguing in public, hell no. Like, I knew if me and my brother were acting a fool in a restaurant and my dad gave me the look, I was gonna get it, but I wasn't gonna get it right then. You get it later. You get it like, back home. If you got something to like settle, it's like whatever. So it's like, or even when I was playing soccer, I think it was really instilled in me like showboating, gloating after you score. No, that's like a terrible thing to do. So it's like you score, you like congratulate your teammate on a nice pass, you run back to like midfield and run it back. But I think in general, it's like my relationship to being the center of attention is definitely a conflicting one. But for me, like making noise that way when everything is quiet and I'm like singing, like I think it was really hard. I felt embarrassed, and it wasn't until I got my driver's license and I could be alone, actually alone for the first time in my life. Like I didn't grow up with a lot of privacy. It was like if I had the door closed, my parents were like, "Why is the door closed?"
Hmm.
So when I had a car and I could sing for the first time, I was experimenting all the time,
That
singing
was your
with,
hearse.
yeah, that was my pink hearse, absolutely. Except it was a silver Honda 98 Civic named Lucy.
That's the
Rest
name
in
of your
peace.
podcast, the Silver Honda
Exactly.
named Lucy. Yeah.
Uh, and that's why I learned. But even through college, I mean, I had a lot of trouble hearing the sound of my own voice back without getting that cognitive dissonance, nails on a chalkboard. Oh my
Wow.
God, why do I have the most annoying voice in the world? Kind of thing that so many of us experience, you know.
Have you done a
But
music video in a car like that car?
no, I should though.
You
I
definitely
should.
should.
That would be cool. Yeah.
And
But
suffering
yeah.
fools, that's what this is all about, right? Making a fool of yourself, making a fool of your family. And like it's that thing, don't embarrass us. And I
Yeah.
have that too. You know, I get mad. It's interesting. The shame. The
Shame.
shame.
Yeah. And I think even now, you know, as I'm doing more solo stuff, I'm realizing how much I rely on Duran as a front person because I'm behind the drums. I'm seated. I don't have to run around on my knees. He's fucking crying. He's like I saw him pass out once by singing so
Wow.
hard.
Wow.
Literally, I was just like, I'm playing. I'm just like, okay, that's like 5 seconds. He's still on the ground.
Oh
Okay,
shit.
okay, there he goes. Okay, he's fine. He's all right. But he was out for a couple seconds.
Wow.
But it's like, you know, I have the privilege of being kind of the reserved front person in that duo, in that context. I can be kind of like the laid back one. He brings I mean he also gets smooth with it. I mean he's an amazing front person.
Yeah.
But when I'm doing solo stuff, I'm brushing up against that in my own life, though, that sort of socializing that programming to like not make a spectacle, but to be a
Interesting.
front person on some level. I think you have to have a certain amount of comfort with being like, everybody stop, it's me, look at me.
100%. I will say that the soft approach and like the beginning of this interview, sensing your energy, made me want to be quiet in a good way and listen. So there is different ways to command, is all I'm saying. I'm sure you know that. And I think you have an incredible presence that can instill or inspire just peace and wanting to like almost like not reverence like to you, but reverence of like the aura of energy that you create with around you.
No, I appreciate that. And I definitely think that like when it comes to fronting a band, or I don't know if you have to like give a presentation or whatever, it's like I think you have to figure out who you are. Like I can't be Duran. I couldn't be if I wanted to. Duran's,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like the way he does it is singular. And even if I was like, I want to do it like that, it would never be that, you know? It's like so for me, I'm on a journey currently of trying to understand outside of that paradigm, my own presence as a front person.
It's beautiful, man. Yeah, we're all here to be who we are here to be. That's the nature does not make duplicates. Well, nature only makes originals. That's what Michael Meade says. I love that.
Mm,
The snowflake theory or something like that.
I like that. Yeah, that's cool.
I think we're gonna bleep out that other joke. I've already decided. So that'll be funny part of the show where people whatever. And I'm gonna have one more that we're about to bleep out. So bear with me. It's a short one, but it came to me. What did it say on the Jewish mother's headstone?
I don't know.
I told you I was sick. Is that
No,
one kind of, does that make
that's
sense?
good. That's
Okay.
good. Yeah, no, I mean,
Guilt.
I mean,
Guilt.
yeah, I got you. Yeah,
Okay, good. It's still
classic.
getting bleeped out. All right, here we go. So as we wind down, like I said, I wanted to know. So we're doing this mini season before this season 2 comes out, where we ask one question for each episode. It's like a sentence spelled down 9 episodes, which I did as an album. If you imagine like a track list spelling a sentence down, I don't know why I haven't
Mm,
seen that. I'd seen that never until I met my man. He's like, "Oh, I did that once." Anyway, the sentence is, "I am a broken man, wilting in full bloom." And I wanted to ask you if it's cool, one of those questions, and we'll probably feature it before this episode comes out in a collage of other amazing humans. The question is, what is the relationship like between your inner child and inner adult? How do they dance? How do they help each other, hurt each other? Do you feel that they are able to harmonize? And if so, what does this look like for you? Or in reverse, are they at odds? And if so, how do you experience this? So it's similar themes of fool and inner parts, but yeah, the kind of childlike nature and then the adult who has to protect. What's the dance for you at this stage?
Man, big questions today. I've been feeling big questions always on the Big Hearse podcast. My relationship between my inner child and adult current self is more harmonious than it used to be. I think when I gained enough maturity to reflect on my years, growing up, I think my immediate reaction was shame, um, for all the ways that I was immature or moments that I was uh, unkind or just a stupid kid, you know. Um, but I also think so many of the ways that we function as children are through survival mechanisms that we don't realize we are in the driver's seat, but they are, and they, on some level, they are the reason that, I was able to make it to adulthood and give myself enough time for my brain to finish cooking enough to understand some of the things that, my brain probably wasn't ready to process. So I'm definitely on some level thankful, thankful for for that young fool, and the ways that I think my brain identified its own area of hyperfocus, being music, and just um, dug in so hard that I it loved something so hard that it's my life now.
That's a quote. That's beautiful. And thank you to your brain for putting up with the madness of Pink Hearse for real.
It's fun,
We're,
man.
I
Tricky,
appreciate
but
that.
fun, and a little
Yeah.
scary, but fun.
Oh, good. I like that.
Yeah.
I think I posted something earlier. Herman Hesse is one of my favorite all-time authors, if you've ever read Steppenwolf. But he says people with courage and character always seem sinister to the rest. Not that I'm saying I am that. I mean, I think I might be a little bit of that, but it's just like real stuff, like being real, holding that tension of that just happened, right? Like in a moment, in any moment, and people don't want to look at it or whatever.
Yeah.
Or like, wait, that was kind of awkward. Like you just interrupted that person, or I just interrupted that person. I'm sorry, my bad. I got too excited. Whatever it may be, I think there's an ease or seeming ease to just tuning out as much as possible, and to hold that presence is hard, but it does get easier. And then also that's why they have shows like the Great British Baking Show, which is what I watch almost every night, or The New Girl, or in order to balance this shit
Yeah.
out, I do stuff like that.
Yeah. I'm a Great British Baking Show fan as well.
Are you really? Oh
Yeah,
God.
I don't smoke weed anymore.
Me neither.
But when I did, I would get super cynical, and I'd start to see what I guess what I describe as like the seams. You see the
Oh,
seams
the
of
seams in the cakes?
yeah, no, the seams, no, not in the cakes, just the seams in the production
Oh, interesting.
of other TV shows. I'm saying it's like
Interesting.
it looks like a set. You can see the script on the page, like even like as they're saying it, you're just like, this is bullshit. Like this is all like, why is this bullshit? Like Great British Baking Show actually, for some reason, was one that I could watch and not feel cynical
Wow.
because it felt so earnest. It felt the knives weren't out metaphorically only in a baking context. They weren't even competing for, like, what they get when they win
Dude,
is
they get a
like
plate.
they get like
They
a
get a
spread
glass
in a
plate.
magazine, like nothing.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and I
They
think
get
there
no
was so,
money for being there. I
yeah,
looked it up. In America, there's a law that being on TV, you have to have a certain amount. They don't get, it's
well,
crazy.
and maybe in some way it's like the fact that in America, if you're on TV, at least you're getting yours, that there's no,
Yeah.
that maybe there's some anti-exploitation. There might
No,
be
there is.
something
I get
there,
it. I'm surprised that they don't. They also don't tip anyone.
Yeah, well, yeah, yeah. But
Anyway,
anyway,
and we're also their children in a weird way. We're their like bastard offshoots, right? And
totally.
it's funny. A lot of my home. I was born in London, but yeah, the Great British Baking Show is, yeah, it's my favorite thing, man. I want to interview all of them. I want to talk to Noel. I want Noel to draw one of it. You've seen his paintings and drawings, Noel, the
No,
comedian.
he's also a musician, right?
I don't know if he is. I know he's a
Okay,
comedian and an artist, like
okay,
a visual artist, but he very may well be. But yeah, I'm glad that you like that show too. My
yeah.
son is constantly like asking us to do the. He's like, "What are we baking today?" So I have to. He has all his Play-Doh, and I'll be like, "Good morning, bakers. Today, the judges would like you to make a nature scene with a bird perched in some formation. Blah, blah, blah. You have 2 hours." And then he'll be like, "How much time do I have?" And then I'll be like, "Bakers, you have 2 hours left." And he'll go, he'll start stressing out and pretending to stress and getting all this stuff. And
That's
he's like, "Play the
incredibly
drum,
sweet.
play that music at the end where they go dun 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 dun." It's like he's so fucking.
That's
He's
amazing,
funny.
man. It's hilarious. It's beautiful.
It's the best. All right. Well, this was amazing. Is there anything else you want to add? I feel complete. There's a few questions that I left out maybe for the next time, but yeah. Anything else you'd like to say, express?
Um, I really appreciate you having me on. I appreciate the thoughtfulness of the questions. It's not a given. At this point, I've been lucky enough to have done a decent amount of interviews and had conversations, like conversation context. And this has definitely been a special one, and I'm thankful for the time. And you, dear listeners, if you've listened this far, thank you for sticking with us.
Exactly. For real. And as my man Edward Crow always, well, yesterday we did an episode. He's a dear friend of mine and works with us on this show. He likes to visualize where the hearse is. I forgot to do that this time. Sometimes it's underwater, sometimes. So maybe now we're on the dark side of the moon, just pulling into the light. I'm going to let you out here and you can fly back down to Earth or wherever else in the galaxy you got to go. But thank you for riding with us. I'm actually the body in the trunk. Death was driving, and Death is a sweetheart. Just has a bad PR person, so very misunderstood. But thank
I,
you all
I,
for listening.
I
Yeah, go,
appreciate the
Mark.
ride, man. Thank you.
You already know.